I could. What is your name? Amy, I'm Anna.
Sorry, I said I was going to do introductions.
Yeah, you did. It's okay. I've seen you before. I think at maybe one of these other times.
Okay, so we had those two. John, you obviously, and Amy and Micah. So how did you find that?
I find it really difficult to listen to somebody and when they stumble on a word, not to say the word that I think they're going for.
Okay.
And that was the only issue, otherwise I was like, oh, I'm quite happy just listening.
Okay.
I find it difficult to concentrate while I'm tired,
Yes.
which I think is very likely to happen when you have a busy day, and then you have to, because if you do active listening, it's very exhausting, I think, because you need to really understand what they're saying, and I find that's challenging.
I found that as soon as you started talking, I think because I wasn't listening. So it took me a few seconds, probably like 30 seconds, to be like, no, you really need to listen to this. So it needed to be like a conscious thing. It wasn't just like I'll sit there and I automatically listen. It had to be an active thing.
Okay. And was there anything in particular that helped you to tune in?
Yes, imagining, because she was telling me about her weekend and imagining what she was telling me. So it was less of words and more of a story, and I could visualise her being there. And
Right. Okay, it's very powerful. You put yourself, you actually got drawn into the story.
Yeah.
I was wondering, Mike, if you were getting drawn into the story because you're physically getting closer to Anna as
And
you're talking.
I was I?
Yes.
Tell me, Anna, tell me now. Yeah, and it's really helpful because Anna's very articulate and it weaves a good story, so that helps in listening to somebody. She's very easy to listen to.
Okay, and as you were listening, were there any points in the conversation where you got distracted or started thinking about something else?
Yes.
I was like trying to focus, and then I lost my focus, and at some point I just know my mind is going somewhere else, and I have to drag it back and thinking, Hannah, I know.
Yeah. Okay.
And I
So
follow
confident.
trains of thought. So if I have, so we were talking about Iraq, and I was like, oh, I have a friend in Iraq. I wonder how he's doing. I wonder if he's from the same place in Iraq as this person.
Okay, so you started having a separate conversation.
Rabbit trails.
Yeah.
Yeah. Rabbit trails.
Yeah.
Okay.
Skitter off down some random road.
Yes. Well done. And what did you notice about the body language of the person you were talking to?
It's very open.
Okay.
You were talking to who you were talking to me?
Either. Anybody.
Either.
Yeah.
Yeah, while she was talking, she was very open and expressionate with her hands.
Okay. And did you notice, so you're talking to Ashley, did you notice at any point in the conversation Ashley's body language change at all?
Not really, no.
Okay. Did that happen to anybody else? No, that's fine. I mean, one of the things that can happen in a conversation, it is quite interesting to notice the way people react when certain statements are said. So if somebody's really interested about something, then they might physically lean forward. Or if they feel challenged, they might physically recoil. Or you might notice the colour in the face start to change. So they might be starting to feel a little bit stressed or hot. Or they maintain great eye contact with you and then they start looking away. And these are all signals that something in the conversation might be either breaking down or really engaging. And certainly one of the things that I've learned a lot about through coaching is just responding better to physically the way other people are responding to me. And that can be a bit of a clue to how a conversation is going. And of course when they get up and walk off, then you know everything's finished and the conversation comes to an end. Okay, so I think it's just helpful as we're having conversations from time to time, just to stop and reflect on the conversation and think, how well did I listen? And I've got a couple of handouts for you. You can take these away and you can use these to review any conversation you like, any casual conversation you want. Just from time to time, just sit down and think, so how's my listening doing? Are there some things in particular that make it difficult for me to listen, and if they are, you can watch out for them. So for me, it might be a noise in the background, because I'm quite an inquisitive person. So if I hear a noise in the background, I think, what's going on? What's happening over there? It's a distraction. It can take my attention away, and I have to remember, no, for now, Lee, if I talk to you, you are the most important person on the planet. That has to wait. Unless it's somebody shouting fire, in which case maybe we would have to do something different. Okay, any questions about that?
And I think for me, although it didn't happen between me and Lee today, but I do notice when I know the person, how interested the person is about what I'm saying by just how they move their body. And now that would makes me emotionally react thinking, well, whether it's worthwhile to carry on, or and I would say, well, to evaluate our friendship, thinking, well, no, that kind of thing. And I think how much we give ourselves away just not through verbally, but just by observe, not even consciously, I think subconsciously we learned how to differentiate, oh, that person really likes me, or that person doesn't really. And although they are making effort, but sometimes you see that they are not really listening. They ask you a question, but they're not interested. And yeah, I think that's quite sad, but it happens.
Okay, and how do you respond to that?
And I just thought, well, don't ask me if you're not interested. And I would not want to. I just, yeah. If my body is like that, I probably think I will cancel all the future meetings.
All right, Phil, that's a great point. I'd like to come back to that when we think about questions. So we'll come back to that. But is that anybody else's experience? Do you feel sometimes you're having a conversation, somebody reacts physically, and then you find you're reacting? Like you want to kind of disengage from the conversation. How do you respond to that?
If it's clear that someone isn't really listening to what I'm saying, then I start either talking about something else entirely, or I just finish quickly and move on. I work with someone who asks me questions regularly and never listens to what I'm saying. And so I just start saying, yeah, and then I, hung the shoe on the tree and walked down the road and put my head in the bin, and then I just walk away. And a lot of times it's like, oh yeah, okay. And you're not really even registering still what I've said. Which I find incredibly frustrating. So, but those kinds of people, if you know that about them as well, then you sort of gear up when you start to talk to them, and you can say, right, okay, he's going to ask me a question, and he doesn't really want to know. And only, you know where you can have conversations with that person as well. Can't have it in a room full of people. Absolutely not, because he's all over. So you start to steer the conversations or steer the scenario before you even begin.
Okay.
It's like learned.
Yeah. Okay. And you give me tips.
My I think mine's more maybe a question, but my experience with communication with international students is that their body language can sometimes be very different to someone who what I would expect from a British person. Mainly when talking to them, not over like telecommunications, because I haven't done that much, but when talking to them either one-on-one or in a group, in that, or I think a lot of people are different, and we can find some British people, but how some people like to be touched a lot and are very tactile, and some people do not want to be touched in the slightest. So I think things like that. So I think I think just maybe gauging that. I think if we have got a relationship with the person that we're going to buddy, then we hopefully will have figured that out before we're over the internet. So then I think it gets even more difficult to try and. But sometimes I think they might be cultural, and I just need to not react to their body language, because it might not mean the same thing as what I'm thinking.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Michael, you're nodding sagely, very wisely.
I'm not sure that's true. But I had a Colombian friend who you'd be able to tell what kind of conversation he wanted to have with you depending on where he put his hand on your arm. So if he was asking you a question, he would put his hand on your elbow, and if he was asking you, and if you were just talking, then he'd massage your hand while he was listening to what you were saying. And if it was a statement, then he'd put his hand on your shoulder, and it was really interesting. And then I have Japanese friends who don't. Simply.
You measured the distance.
Yes, exactly. You walk away and you say, hi, how are you doing?
All right, I will come back to some of that. That's really, really good. I don't think about questions. I think about some different kinds of questions. Again, I've got a handout you can take away. So we don't cover everything all the time. And I need someone to help me. I'll look at Phil. You might help me. We need something to talk about. It doesn't matter what it is. We won't get to the end of the conversation. This is simply a way of illustrating different kinds of questions we can ask. Okay, so if you just think of a subject, it could be as inane as you like.
Cycling 100 kilometres.
Cycling 100 kilometres, something fresh in your mind. Okay, right. I'd like to start off by just talking about very, very generally two types of questions. Then we'll have a go asking Phil a few, and then we'll ask him a few more. So I want to just mention something about open and closed questions. So you've probably heard of this phrase. So, for the tape, as they say. Just to summarise this very quickly, a closed question is a question which is designed to bring the conversation to a temporary close. You're trying to find something specific. It's a specific piece of information. There is one answer to it. So if the question is, Phil, who makes your bike? What make is your bike?
I can't remember. It's Luna's.
Specialised cirrus.
There you go.
Specialised cirrus. Okay, closed question. There is one answer to it. A question could be, is your body still sore after all that cycling?
Yes.
Yes or no answer. Closed question. Closed questions, fine if you want to find out something specific, if you want to check facts. Sometimes a closed question can lead to a more open conversation, but generally you'd use it just to find out something, check information, make sure you understand what's going on. An open question is just that. It opens up the conversation. Conversation could go anywhere. So a question about Phil's bike might be something like, why did you choose that bike?
Because it was cheap.
Okay. So we could then, if it was important, we could then get into, so how big was your budget? But I won't ask you that, because that's not important. So an open question, one that starts to open up a conversation. We could have a conversation about your bike, for example. So the next kind of part of this is thinking, after you've asked an open or a closed question, you might then, if you're getting into an open question, want to explore a situation slightly more deeply. And then you'll be asking what I would call an exploring question. You can think of another label for this, but I'll call it an exploring question. Exploring questions will look at things like more facts, you might think about feelings, and someone's future. So I think your bike could be really good fun for this. So any more factual questions people would like to ask about Phil and his cycling?
What colour is your bike?
Black.
Is it a road bike?
Hybrid.
Does it have a bell on it?
Yes.
It does.
Very useful.
Little tassels on the side. Tassel on the front.
No.
I think those come as standard now, I think, actually.
You have to have that, I think, if a new bike will come with one.
Okay, so classic situation there. Phil, an exploring question. A version of an exploring question is a clarifying question. So what kind of bike? You said a hybrid. What's a hybrid?
Halfway between a mountain bike and a road bike. So it's not as thick as a mountain bike, but it's not as thin as a road bike.
Okay. And something that's a key part of a coaching conversation, or a coaching bit of a conversation, is please, 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 don't be afraid to ask a clarifying question. Particularly if you're talking to someone from a different culture, because let's face it, people from a different culture, if they're coming to your culture, will ask you lots of clarifying questions. So why not do the same thing? Let's try and understand a little bit more about cycling. So let me talk about, if you wanted to explore Phil's feelings about cycling, what kinds of questions could we ask him?
What do you enjoy about cycling? Sorry, go ahead.
Well, on Sunday, when I was doing the cycle ride for Transformations Leeds, Ringwood Leeds, for the first 45 miles, we were out in the open air. There was nice countryside. We could stop at a tea shop, get to see parts of Yorkshire that I don't normally see, get good exercise. It was lovely. It was lovely. It then kind of rained, got tired, and it was really windy. But at the beginning, it was really nice. It's great. I love it.
Okay, we'll just stop there. We'll ask you a few more in a minute. What have you learned about Phil from that one question?
He doesn't like cycling when he's tired.
He doesn't like cycling when he's tired.
It seems like countryside.
He likes countryside. What else does
He
Phil
likes tea shops.
Did you know that Phil liked t-shirts?
Yeah.
So you've gone from bikes to tea-shops. Well, what's the connection there? It's an open question. What else did we find out about Phil?
Do you feel more excited about explanation, or rather than just asking facts questions?
He became quite animated.
Yeah, and a particular fact that we got out of that very brief reply from Phil was what? Did you notice?
He enjoys cycling.
Okay, there's a fact with a number.
45 miles.
45 miles.
Oh.
Okay, 45 out of how many miles?
62.
Okay, because you did notice he said, when I've ridden 45 miles, so you might take that as a bit of a hint that actually he wants you to know how many miles he's done. So, one question, what do you like about cycling? You've got all that. Any more? Open questions, exploring questions, feelings questions.
So what was the worst part of the last 17 miles?
Okay, very good.
It was the heavy downpour as we came into Leeds, as it started to chuck it down. It came dark at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and it was cold, and I just wanted to get home by that point.
All right, now go back into listening mode. Listening to Phil talking there, what did you notice about the way he explained that? What did you hear?
He was less animated, his voice got lower.
Voice got lower. Lower and slower. Yeah, it was not, you were not excited. Okay. So there's a little hint about what's happening in Phil's heart, or what he's feeling about it. Like you were saying earlier, also might be that he doesn't like cycling when it's like miserable.
No, it was like disappointment was coming through, like sort of almost like defeat a little bit.
So if you wanted to know if it was disappointment, defeat, how would you find out? What could you
to
ask for?
say? So the first part of it was really great, but was the end of it was how did you feel about the end of it? Was it less exciting than the beginning, or?
Yeah.
That's not helpful, is it? Not helpful at all.
Because it's just a way of exploring different ways of thinking about it. So you actually came up with some quite interesting words there in terms of disappointment and defeat. So you could ask Phil if he was to describe how he felt about it. If you had one word to describe how you felt about those last 17 miles, what would it be?
Tired.
Okay.
Hard work. I don't think that you used words that I hadn't thought of before. So you used like disappointment. So you were labelling an experience for me, and I wasn't quick enough to think. But now I've had all of this time. I wasn't disappointed because I felt a sense of achievement with what I'd done. It was just not quite as good as the beginning bit.
Okay. Sorry, you were going to ask.
I just thought, well, if I think about what Phil said, for me, I would read it as, it sounds like the weather does make him feel bad. So I would identify the the factors,
Okay.
what created that kind of emotional response. So probably, yeah.
Yep. So you've got into kind of a fact-based thing
Yeah.
there. Actually, what you've done around is you've actually got into a different kind of question, which is great, which I didn't think I'd get round to, but I'm seeing you put it in. So you've actually given us a summarising and reflective question.
I'm a chaplain.
There you go. See, it comes naturally to you. And it's okay to do this, providing you're not taking, not making a decision for the person you're talking to. So you could have asked, and you might not have done in a real conversation, but you could have asked, Phil, you're talking about this last 17 miles. It sounds to me like you were feeling disappointed or defeated. And you could use that as a question. So, is that how you felt, or how would you describe it? Now, you have to be a little bit careful using words which kind of put ideas into somebody's head, but it's okay to do that, providing you're giving them the chance to either agree with you or disagree with you. And it's often helpful, if you want to put a label on a conversation, is to give some alternatives. So you're always giving a choice to the person you're speaking to, rather than feeling a bit kind of channeled down a particular route. Okay, so we've done some reflective questions, which is great, thank you. We've done some exploring questions. I'd like to think about some, now there's a bit of technical jargon here, hypothetical or counterfactual questions, which is a very posh way of talking about a what-if question. Now, the reason we might ask a what-if question is to help someone think about how the world could be different, or to challenge their assumptions. So this is a bit of a game, because we're talking about cycling and Phil's 62 miles cycle ride. But if you're going to ask a what-if question, so we've talked about the world as it actually was and actually how you actually found it. Now we want to think about the world, if the world had been different, what might then have happened? So I'll give you an example. So if you rocked up to a really, really nice tea shop and they were offering a free cream tea to a cyclist, would you have taken up the offer for them?
Well, yeah, because halfway around, Lee found us a very nice tea shop, and I did indeed have hot chocolate and a scone. So I was
smiling.
Yeah, so I was halfway there.
Okay.
And cycle rides with Lee, as I found out, are very civilised affairs, with stops organised where we meet his wife with the flask and some flapjack, and very civilised. Very civilised.
Nice.
Well, you should have provisions, even if we're not meeting the car.
All right.
So what we've learned here is that it's good to go on cycle rides with Lee.
Oh, yes.
Okay, so if we're thinking about, let's try and think a little bit more about Phil's future, cycling future. So I know this man, he can do 62 miles in cream tea. So that's really good, particularly in good weather. So if we want to help Phil think about becoming an even better cyclist, or an even more accomplished cyclist, are there any kind of what-if questions we could ask Phil? It does get slightly harder.
Yeah. What if you had a much lighter road bike? Do you think you'd be able to cycle further or enjoy a longer ride?
Yeah, I think if I had a lighter bike, then it would help me to go faster and further. Because although we didn't start that early on the day, so we could have had a longer day. We could have gone further. But we didn't.
If you had the opportunity to join a cycling club, where they organise rides for you and you go weekly, would you do
it? If Cody was old enough to come with me and he wanted to, then yes. I don't think it's just, and if we didn't have kids, then probably yes. But right now, with our stage of life, that's just never going to happen.
Now that's a great statement, which I'm not going to challenge, but I'm just going to use it as an illustration. So what you had there was Phil made an assumption. You said, with my life stage and my kids at the age they are, there are some things I can't do. Now, we're not going to get into a discussion about your family, because that's really fair to you. But just to make the point, in conversations, we all make or hear people make assumptions. They say, because this is the case, the following has to be the case. And it can be very helpful sometimes to ask people, is that true? So let's come back to Joy's example earlier, or something like Joy's example. So let me give an example. I'm having a conversation with somebody, or I've had a conversation with someone, and then I see that person again later in the week, and I'm walking towards them, and they're walking towards me, and I say, hello, and they walk right past and they ignore me.
Aww.
And my reaction is, you miserable so-and-so, ignoring me. So what's the assumption I'm making?
Did
They
it?
actively chose to not acknowledge you.
Okay, so help me. Help me challenge that assumption.
Is that true?
Are you sure the person saw you?
Great question. Is it true? How would I know?
Well,
You've been
but you
defensive.
need to break. How would you know? Well, you could ask him.
Have you talked to the person? Have you asked?
No.
Why not?
Okay, good question. I'll talk about why questions in a minute, but it is a perfectly reasonable question to ask. So there, I'm making an assumption. So help me think about the assumption. So which is what you've done. You said, well, how do I know that they just ignored me? Maybe they didn't see me. Maybe they were distracted. Maybe they were looking at somebody
Maybe
else.
they were on their way somewhere and needed to get there quickly.
Yeah. Maybe by the time they'd realised that they'd seen me, that we were so far apart that they couldn't say hello anyway.
Maybe they couldn't place you. They couldn't remember where they knew you from.
Okay. But it's just keeping that thought in mind. We react to people because we make an assumption about what's happening in them. And in conversations, people will make a statement which has an assumption behind it. And it's helpful to treat a statement which is an assumption. Treat it like a theory which can go into a laboratory. So I'm sure, because I know Phil's thought about this, if we kind of explored this here, there's only so many things I can do with my kids. He was like, well, actually, I've thought this through. I've asked myself some questions about this, and actually, there are some limits as to what I can do when it comes to cycling with my family. And that's very helpful because I know there's a point at which that will change, and then we can revisit that assumption. It's just to have that thought in mind. Listen for when it is that people are making a statement, and you can ask, well, is that true? Let's test it out, and if it is true, fine. But you've given somebody the chance to think about that statement to see whether it is true or not, and how much what they believe is driving what they're doing. Okay, very quickly, I'd like to think about helping Phil become an even better cyclist. So we're going to ask some motivational questions. So I'd like to try to get Phil to the point where he can make a decision about being an even better cyclist. Okay, so here's a question. What's your next cycling challenge that you're setting yourself?
I don't have one because the cycling challenge that I'm talking about I only did on Sunday. So as of 2 days ago, that was my cycling challenge.
Okay. What's the next cycling challenge you'd like to have?
I don't know at the moment. Joy was telling us about somebody who's cycling from London to Barcelona at dinner.
Okay.
That's not what I want to do.
Yes.
So just work with me on this. We'll make something up for the sake of argument. So if Barcelona's too far, how far would you like to cycle as your next challenge?
I am interested in how far, well, I can't remember how far it is, the second stage of the Tour de France was, that went from York round the hills and came back into Sheffield. That would certainly be a huge challenge for me. I don't know if I could do that yet.
Okay, all right. Well, let's assume for the sake of argument that you've set yourself that as a challenge, that you're going to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to ask Phil some motivational questions to help him get to the point where he's saying, I'm really going to go for this and make this work. So what kind of questions do you think you could ask Phil that would get him excited about engaging with that challenge and would get him so excited he'd want to do something about it? What do you think? What could you ask him?
What you did this time?
Why did you do it this time?
What year?
Why did you cycle?
Good one.
Well, I did it this time because it was part of the team challenge. So it was motivated by raising money for transformations and by doing something together as a team.
Do you find this is a helpful way to raise money? Would you like to replicate it in the future?
Potentially, yes. Depends how the finances of the charity go. But that is always a useful thing, because on the morning when it actually happens, you think, oh, all these people have sponsored me, I've got to go through with it now.
Yeah.
Did you feel a real sense of achievement after finishing it on Saturday?
I did feel a great sense of achievement, because it was like I'd set myself this goal. I thought, can I do it? And it's certainly a lot further than anything I've done for quite a while. So yeah, it did give me a great sense of achievement. I felt yeah, good.
And if you did the same distance again, do you think you'd have, in 2 months' time, do you think you'd have the same sense of achievement? Or do you think you need to go further next time?
Good question. I don't know, maybe I do need to feel like I've gone a little bit further, otherwise it's just, same old. So increasing it slightly would give me more motivation.
Do you think you'd feel more of a challenge if there's more climbing? You know, thinking not so much about distance, but the day 2 is notable for its climbing, so you think you'd find that a greater challenge to relish?
Yeah, I think the thing that motivates me about doing the day 2 is the thinking that this is the route that the professionals took, and that I'm following in people's footsteps. It's the same. Ruth makes fun of it. It's the same little boy part of me that would like to go out onto Wembley Stadium and play football. It's that feeling of I'm doing what the big boys have done, even if it's like 10 hours slower. So yeah, that would motivate me to think I'm doing what Cavendish and Wiggins and Froome did.
Okay, so if you wanted to motivate Phil to ride again, the kind of things you might want to do is to get professional scientists to write to him and say, I'll ride with you 50 yards down the road. That'd be motivating. Offer him a lot of money for his charity. That would be helpful. Come up with a distance that's slightly longer than the one that you did before, but is still manageable. That could be another one as well. And maybe offer to go with him. And it was interesting in what you said. You felt a sense of responsibility to other people. So if you can get Phil to make a commitment to someone who he then can't say no to because he said I'm going to do it, then that's another good motivator. So all these things you can.
Or what if you had a party at the end of stage 2 with all of your friends and family there to receive you? You think that would be really fun?
No. I would find that really.
Be very tired.
I would find that really demotivating.
You probably wouldn't do it. You're probably like 10 yards from the finish, just take your bike off.
Maybe little pep stations along the way rather than party at the end.
The thought of facing loads of people at the end of the day like that is just like my worst nightmare.
Gosh, very different. Get into the party. It's the only thing keeping me going.
But that's really interesting.
Yeah.
What Anna's doing there. So Anna's saying, so you've asked a hypothetical question, which is fine, and you've asked it on the basis of your experience, which is fine. You've got some experience, you think, this experience might be helpful for Phil, but you haven't said to him, if you do this will be great for you, won't it, Phil? You say, what about this? Well, you've just discovered that that's not going to work for you. So it's always helpful going into a conversation, if you're going to a buddying conversation, it is helpful to think about some of the questions you want to ask, and then also think about some of the alternative questions you might want to ask. Because if you'd ask that with Phil and you get this, I don't want to do that, it's the last thing on earth I want to do is have a party, that could kind of kill the conversation, unless you have something to follow it up with, which I'm sure you would. One last tip about motivation, and you can answer this honestly if you like. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how motivated are you to do another 62-mile bike ride?
Right now,
Yeah.
not very.
On a scale of 1 to 10,
3.
3. What would make it a 4? You don't have to answer.
More tea shops?
Yes.
That's just an example. It's called scaling. And so you would ask, well, on a scale of 1 to X, how motivated are you? So if you're having conversations with your buddies, and as part of that conversation, you've agreed a course of action, and Joy's put this in the kind of summary of your questionnaire. It's a very, very powerful part of any conversation is to agree something else to do. It doesn't have to be massive, it doesn't have to be earth-shattering, it's just another thing someone can do because it gives them a sense of empowerment, a sense of moving forward, a sense of getting closer to a goal. But one of the ways of testing people's level of motivation is to ask something like that. On a scale of 1 to 10, where are you? And then what would make it one more than that? And again, it's just helping someone think through about where they get their energy from and where they could get more energy to get closer to what they need to achieve. Phil, you're a good sport. Thank you very much. All off the cuff. That's good. Thank you.
You can still donate. If you
Donations to Transport America. All right, we've a little bit of time left, which Joy wants to use. We're not going to use this, but just before we do, are there any other questions that you have for me? Just one here.
I just wonder, I'm the person who, like, if I'm listening something, I wanna ask if I have a question right away. But should I wait until they finish their conversation, or can I just interrupt their conversation?
Okay, what would you say?
Depends on the person.
Depends completely on the person. I think me and my boyfriend have had this, that he doesn't wait and he just asks, and I sometimes think that's really rude. Because conversations can naturally come to a point where it would be more natural to ask. Yeah, but I do think it is the person. I was going to say, more often than not, you should wait, but that's definitely just me.
Well, there's like 3 different kinds of communication style, right? There's like people who are talking and then talking over each other and talking over each other, and some cultures are really okay with that, like India, that happens quite a lot, Morocco's the same. Then you have the kind where one person says something and then the next person starts immediately, and then you have the other kinds, which is more the Asian cultures, where someone speaks and then there's a long silence, where there's a pause in between, and then somebody responds. And so you don't know that though about the person you're speaking to until you start speaking to them, whether or not, but you can sort of gauge by their response, if they seem like kind of startled by your question, then maybe next time you wait till they're finished, or if they went, oh yeah, no, good question, or kept going, you can kind of see how they engage.
Is there a time when it's always okay to interrupt and ask a question?
Is it in talking phrases?
Possibly.
Yeah, I was going to say clarifying. If you desperately need clarification,
Yeah.
you're not following them.
If I say something and you don't understand what I'm talking about, there's no point in me carrying on if you don't understand what I'm talking about. And then it's fine to say, or just a minute, can I just ask you? And then you're not interrupting their train of thought, they're just helping you carry on with that train of thought. And that's okay.
That's okay.
So what would you say?
I was having a conversation with somebody yesterday who was explaining something that she was quite upset about, and the natural flow of what she was saying was that she was upset about it. She actually said something that was factually incorrect, which was a minor thing, and I chose to point it out to her, and it really threw what she was saying, because all I was doing was actually disagreeing with a factual thing that in the end we agreed she had actually got wrong. But actually afterwards I thought I didn't need to do that, because really how she experienced it was that I wasn't valuing her upset, and even though what I was disagreeing with was actually this small little factual bit that she knew that she actually got incorrect, but wasn't really that relevant, she experienced it as me disagreeing with her whole experience. And afterwards I thought, that was pointless, it didn't matter about that thing. But what was more important was that I should affirm that she was upset about this thing, and she had every right to be upset about this thing, and that was the important thing. So I think sometimes, yeah, I just give that as an example of how not to do it.
I think this is very important because a lot of situations I experience is the person or myself is just expressing my feeling, and the fact is less important.
You just need to be heard.
I just need to be heard. So you don't really need to say, "Hannah, that's not fair." The person, and that's just how to say, make it worse.
Right, it's dismissive.
Yeah.
It feels dismissive, even if that wasn't the intention.
Yeah, it feels like you don't listen what I'm saying, although I'm probably saying something meaningless, but I'm just expressing as emotion rather than the fact.
But what I'm saying is not like judging thing. I just want to ask. But is it okay to interrupt? Like, but yeah.
Think about the context of the conversation. Think about the person. Think about why you're asking the question. And there's a nice way to interrupt people, which is to say something like, okay, this is what I think you've said to me. It's to summarise what they've said. And particularly if people talk for a long time, that can actually be quite important, so you don't actually lose track, because you can forget what people are talking about. And just say, can I just make sure I understand what you were saying, or however you say it, or something. And that shows you're still listening to them. Interrupting becomes a problem when you're kind of giving someone the message, I'm not interested in what you're saying anymore. Summarising is a good way of saying, so I am still interested in what you're saying, but you need to help me in this conversation, because I need to make it work. I need to help you make it work as well.
I have a question. So in situation, for example, if we only have certain limited amount of time to engage in a purposeful conversation, which I would like to know what the certain facts, for example, the buddy thing, we're going to know how are they doing. But the student starting to just talk something absolutely, yeah. And although we need to respect that because we are genuinely interested in to know, but at the same time within that limited time, I need to know certain facts. How can you do it without appear too purposeful? Does that make sense? Yeah.
Okay.
There's a couple of things that you could say. One could be, that's interesting. I was thinking that I'd particularly like to talk to you about, or you started talking about your family situation. How is what you're talking over here, is that relevant to this? And they might just say, no, not at all. Or they might say, well, actually it's relevant because of this. And suddenly like, okay. Or another thing you can say is, you seem really interested in talking about this. What's the importance, or what's the relevance of this to what we're talking about? Trying to help them to evaluate, because there might be some relevance, or it might just be, I don't know, fancy talk, or it might be importance, because this is really important to me. Sometimes I've had sorry, I'm not communicating very clearly. Sometimes I've had a conversation with people at the beginning of the buddy time, where I've asked them to talk about what it is they want to talk about, and they've talked for 10 minutes about their family, and then they talk for 2 minutes about their job. And I say, okay, so you mentioned a couple of things there. What's the thing that is most helpful for you to focus on today? And I'm thinking, it's obvious. I talked about the family for 10 minutes. And then they'll go, oh, my family, no, that's nothing. Actually, what we really need to talk about is my job. So I think if you give them an opportunity for them to decide what is the one thing that you're going to focus on, I think that can be helpful.
Also, you cannot ask further question. I mean, you don't need to ask further question. You just listen, and then help them to finalize that talk. And then you can, then what about this? And you can just raise a new question. So you don't need. I mean, you keep showing your interest, but you don't need to ask a further question to help them to.
Don't seem overly interested. I guess in the rabbit trail. If they've gone off topic, don't continue to engage
Exactly. Yeah.
that, so then they sort of trail off.
Okay. And I suppose the other thing is just think about the sequence of the conversation. So if you started the conversation and there are some things that you need to know, well, why not start off by saying, before we get into anything else, I just need to find out the following. Is that okay? Unless they're absolutely desperate to talk about something, the house is falling down on their head. But that's fine. You've structured the conversation. You've let them know that they're going to have the time to talk about what's important to them, and you've also valued yourself. Or alternatively, you say, I need a few minutes to talk about whatever I want to talk about, and maybe partway through the conversation, say we've been talking for half an hour, we've got 20 minutes left, I need to have 10 minutes at the end. It depends a bit on how your relationship goes, but these are just nice things you can do just to let people know how the conversation needs to go.
I think it was really helpful when you spoke about using WeChat for, you know, every day, not every day, but maybe like once a week or something, to be like, this is what I'm doing, what are you doing? Because then otherwise, I know I found that if I Skype them once a month, or we could spend an hour on what we've done for a month, and then you don't actually, you're like, oh, you've got to go, oh right, okay, yeah, I did, that wasn't productive at all. But I feel like if you did utilise maybe just actively like once a week on a certain time of day or whatever, like this is what I'm doing, what are you doing, you keep up to date in that sense, so that when you do come down to meet to talk active, like, you know, purposefully on a monthly basis, you can be like, oh, I know you've been doing this, you've been doing this, you've been doing this, so how has that helped you in your faith?
The reason I raised that question is because I had a lot of feedback from people talking about it's really easy when you're trying to engage with students to listen what their problem is, and by the end of the conversation you're thinking, oh my goodness, I haven't really encouraged them or brought in God into our conversation to help to them to think about how God can help in this kind of situation, that kind of thing. So I think you could disagree with me, but I always trying to say, well, yes, I'm listening, but I can't help them directly. In which way I could bring God into the conversation. So, because the point is, we need to remind them what is the key. You know what I mean?
I think if they sort of pause even for a second, you could say, you know, something came to me as you were talking about that, and a scripture came to mind. Can I share that with you, or something? Or, you know, I thought of something that Jesus said, and, you know, as you were saying that, and then you could almost kind of steer the conversation, you know, take advantage of the pause.
There may be a chance to think about this for a few minutes if you think about all your scenarios. So I need to finish now because I'm going to abuse my time. There's something else you need to do. If you wanted to kind of explore more of a conversation like this, which thinks about how can you have, you know, God, Jesus as the focus of the conversation, that is something I could come back and talk to you about. I've got a little model for that, if that's of use at some point. If you get the chance as buddies to get together and talk about the conversations you've been having, that would be really, really helpful, because then you can talk about specifics and the specific people you're working with. And that is a really, really helpful thing to do. So, yeah, I believe thank you for the opportunity to come and talk to you.
It's okay. Can we split up the threes?
Yes, yes.
Can you explain what the purpose is, and then because I know.
Right. What do we need to be talking about in our threes?
So, Marika, you're going to talk, and you're going to talk as if you are Jackie.
Oh.
Joy, you're going to talk as if you are the student.
Cool.
You can choose one of the scenarios that you put down. Is that okay?
Yeah.
And Anna can be with Marika as the buddy, and Amy, would you like to be the buddy with Joy? And you want people to listen? Third person?
Just, why don't you do this as, get into your threes, kind of do this as a kind of a team coaching
I know, I'm going to put up a person with you.
Conversation. So you have, so you've got the person who is being conversed with, and two people conversing with them. So what I suggest is, If one person has a conversation for 5 minutes and the third person is the timekeeper, and then swap over after 5 minutes, and then at the end of that 10-minute conversation, just see what's come out of it and what you would say to each other. So if you're the one who's being spoken to, what you found helpful, and as you were listening to each other in that conversation, questions you were asking, what you were saying, what you found helpful, what you might have learned listening to somebody else having that conversation. Okay?